As the sun sets over the African desert, a service crew eagerly awaits its riders to return to the bivouac. On one of the most challenging stages of the Dakar rally, they wait and wait, and all that can be heard is silence. During a stage that introduced the riders to cruel desert dunes, the free KLR horsemen are nowhere to be found. As night falls, hours pass by, and still, there is nothing to be heard. The green team are nowhere to be seen. In a small Kawasaki dealership in the Netherlands, a group of free bikers makes a huge announcement during their yearly New Year's party. Noel Bicker, Michael van den Ende, and Peter Osterbeck were going to take on the infamous rally.
They only had 1 year to prepare for it. Normally, 1 year for a race is ample time, but for Dakar, some people dedicate their whole lives to reaching it.
Yet this ambitious trio was going to do it in just 365 days. So, who were they? Noel was the owner of said dealership, and allegedly, he had been a jet ski champion in his past years.
A big motocross and off-road enthusiast, he shared his passion with his fellow mates, and that's what led them to signing up for the world's hardest rally.
For training, the group decided to tackle the beach race at Le Touquet, a massive race that gathered over 800 riders at its start. It was a good benchmark for the Kawasaki horsemen. 2 of them had done the race before, and apparently, Noel had even finished in the top 10 on a previous edition. Expectations were high, but pretty soon, the trio ran into problems. As the 800 riders departed, massive queues started to form, making motorcycles overheat left and right. The free Dutchmen were riding Kawasaki KX450Fs, motocross bikes slightly converted for tackling the beach race. After just 1.5 laps, Noel had to retire due to a head gasket issue.
Peter and Michael managed to get to the finish line, but only halfway down the leaderboard. After multiple steps to cool down the motorcycles and refill the radiators, they got to the end, but this event was an eye-opener, and an event that was going to foreshadow their Dakar experience.
Look, initially, the Free wanted to convert those same K-axes to Dakar machines and race with those. But this event raised some issues. For one, it raised questions on the durability of the high-strung motocross engine. Its gear ratios were far from ideal, and the cooling situation, that was even worse. Add to it a lack of electric starter, which when stuck in the dunes can prove to be a massive energy saver. That's when their grand idea came into play. What if that KX wasn't Kawasaki's best offering? What if they had a better chance on finishing on a slightly different animal? The trusted KLR650.
This sounds ambitious, to say the least. But there was a method to the madness. In fact, this was not the first time a KLR faced the Dakar rally.
In 1987, as racers departed from Versailles on the 13,000-kilometer long race course, 154 motorcycles presented themselves at the start line. And one of those was Batti Grassotti, riding a mostly stock KLR650. And for those first stages, Grassotti was holding his own, coming in 30th to 40th on every single stage. That was a solid result, one that should guarantee a finish, assuming nothing went wrong. As the rally approached its 6th stage, something did go wrong for Grassotti. Very wrong. Close to the border with Niger, our rider took a wrong turn that sent him running in the wrong direction. It took him a while to figure it out, and once he did, the KLR rider tried backtracking. But that was easier said than done. After finally finding the right track again, his trusty Kawasaki faced another problem. The fuel had run out. Alone, stuck in the middle of the desert, it seemed like all hope was lost. But in Dakar, it's never over until it's over. By some miracle, 2 headlights could be seen in the distance. In fact, 2 locals stumbled upon our stranded rider. They managed to extract fuel from another abandoned vehicle, and suddenly, Grassotti was on his way again. He was told to follow a particular star in the sky. And by doing that, the star guided him all the way to the bivouac. Grassotti got there. Unfortunately for him, it was all a little too late. By the time he reached Arlit, the morning was already upon the bivouac, and that meant the first competitors had already left for the next day's stage. You see, he got there, but not on time. This KLR's Dakar was officially over.
The point is, Grassotti didn't finish the Dakar in '87, but it wasn't because of his KLR. In fact, the bike did great. You see, that was the method to the madness. A precedent was set, so why couldn't our Dutch team complete the rally on the same type of bike?
And you know what? The start of the '07 Dakar was promising. A mix of mud and shallow sand proved to be no problem for the KLRs, as they all got home on time, safely. Petter even helped tow a fellow rider who had run out of gas. But you see, the first two stages on European soil were more of a gentle introduction. The real challenge was up ahead as the convoy reached the African continent, and with it, one of its signature obstacles: sand dunes. Unlike their predecessors in the 80s, the team realized that the stock KLR was not going to cut it. They had to prepare well ahead of the rally. Look, these bikes have a bulletproof reliability reputation, but that applies for travelers, not for racers, because the stresses they were going to face were completely different. In July, the team went on to modify the bikes. A company in Italy custom-built their aluminium fuel tank, and allegedly, HyperPro sorted out a suspension tuning. From the outside, the bike still oddly used the standard antiquated design, but I would imagine the internals being much different.
The thing is, the effort required was monumental. The Free had to find sponsors, get approved by the ASO to race, and to add insult to injury, finding KLR race parts was not an option, because nobody really raced that platform. They had to engineer and build a lot of their upgraded components from scratch.
Meanwhile, they had another build going on for their support Land Cruiser. Finally, in September, they got their official confirmation from ASO. The Free were officially registered for Dakar, and they were as ready as they could to face the sand dunes. The third stage of the rally, and the first on Moroccan soil, proved to be bittersweet. A stage that featured many rocks and rough surfaces saw the Kawasaki team come in around the 200th place. All of them finished without issues, but here's the thing. Over 30 riders had dropped out by that point, leaving just 231 still into the race. Our KLR guys were cutting it dangerously close to the back of the pack. As they got into the bivouac at 9 PM, they started preparing for the day to follow, the rally's first marathon stage. They were obviously not fighting for a win.
But if one of the bikes managed to finish, that would matter more than any win could. In fact, that's the story for most amateurs that tackle this rally, even up to these days.
A long night awaited the mechanics as they scrambled to prepare and fix the KLRs. You have to understand, at base, this was a 41 horsepower, 189 kilo motorcycle. Far from anyone's definition of performance. And the Dakar ones had to be even heavier as they needed to carry more fuel. The KLR was a symbol of reliability with a simple engine and robust construction, a great base for adventure riding. And that's why this could have worked.
If finishing first was the goal, the effort would have been futile. But if just reaching the finish line was good enough, the KLR could have maybe crawled its way to Lac Rose.
Stage 4 was going to present one of the toughest days of the rally. A 405-kilometer marathon filled with sand dunes. This was the real introduction to the African desert. And as the day went on, there were no updates from any Team Green rider. Hours passed by and still nothing. As the sun approached the end of the horizon, fans at home noticed that on Dakar's website, the KLR horsemen were declared DNF. So, what happened? You see, that's a question everyone had on their mind, especially the service crew, as they were waiting throughout the night, clueless to where their Dutch comrades were. In fact, during this time, Noel, Michael and Petter were constantly fighting the desert. As soon as the bikes hit the heavy dunes, they sunk and got stuck constantly. The soft sand was eating the KLRs alive, and they could only get out as the desert cold came in later that day, as it made the sand a little harder. Finally, the Free completed the stage. But at this point, it was the morning after. When they arrived at the finish, all other motorcycle competitors had left already. They were late. Way too late.
The thing is, Dakar is a race against yourself, against the terrain, but also a race against time.
Even if not aiming for podium places, the countdown clock ticks for everyone. That year, only 132 riders managed to finish. That's half of all competitors. Even if the green team would have passed that fourth stage, realistically speaking, odds were against them. But they tried, which has to be admired. They had a dream and went for it.
We have to remember, most people doing this are amateurs. Sure, a KLR never got to the finish line. Not then and never since. But for the three Dutchmen, they fought it all the way to the end.
They battled the sand, the cold nights, but maybe the machine just wasn't quite right. Ultimately, a KLR650 is an adequate tool for a lot of jobs. Desert racing just might not be one of them. Thanks for watching.